back of Queensland Government's ability to actually provide an exemption for agriculture workers, we wanted to come here today and highlight the impact that the city-centric decisions being made by very parochial premiers across this country are having on rural and regional communities and on our industries. We've been on this journey in Victoria, New South Wales, southern New South Wales, for over 2 months. It was mid-June when hotspots were identified in Melbourne, and instead of shutting them down swiftly and securely, that has been allowed to spread through, a litany of poor decision-making and implementation of public policy by the Labor government in Victoria, which I won't go into. But the reality is that hasn't really delivered confidence to the country that state governments are up to the challenge. What we need is a nationally consistent approach to border closures, not just to being able to identify hotspots, but to border closures. You've all heard the horrific stories of people being unable to access appropriate health care, stories of Year 12 and 11 students being unable to sit their exams in what's one of their most important years of their life, and the mental health toll that that's having on our young communities out in the regions. And the absolute ridiculous, servicing of this border closure by city-centric state governments. I've got constituents in Victoria who last week were told to fly 40 head of sheep to Sydney, quarantine them, and then drive them south over 10 hours to get to the Coral Sale Yards, which was just an odd 20k from where they actually resided. These are COVID-free communities who operate as one economy and have since 1901. I don't want to go back to 1899. I know our border communities don't either. We need a common sense and practical approach. It's what the National Party has been calling for over 8 weeks. We welcome a first step by Queensland, but we call on other premiers to get with the program and understand that our national economy is underpinned by the regions and we need to get on with doing business.
We have adults who can't go to work. We have children who can't go to school. We have little children as young as 3.5 with cancer who are not permitted an exemption or a permit to head to hospital at the Royal Adelaide. These are critical times. It is un-Australian and it's unacceptable that our border communities are treated with such disrespect and a lack of dignity. We have been fighting for 8 weeks now. I have been lobbying consistently the premiers both of New South Wales, because Mallee of course borders New South Wales and South Australia, so I have the joy of 3 premiers determining restrictions and not permitting normal life to take place. I have farmers who've been well publicised now, who can't move their sheep, who can't repair their crops, who can't take an agronomist over the border to their property to determine how bad the fungus is due to rain. We have critical incidences that are happening day after day, and my office has been inundated with them. It's very distressing to hear them, and while individual lobbying may have worked for individual people, it's not a solution. We need a broad solution that is acceptable. I'm seeking a code, just like we've been able to achieve with the freight code, for education, for agriculture, for health, so that our constituents and our cross-border communities know where they stand and can rely on being able to get the treatment that they need, go to school, finish their courses. Parents can send their children to school and know that they're going to be able to finish the year. We need a national solution.
Thank you. Senator Davey for New South Wales. I live in Deniliquin, or outside Deniliquin. I live 35 kilometres away from my office, and it takes me less time to drive to work than a friend of mine in Sydney who drives 7 kilometres. The reality of regional areas is we move about, we go long distances. We have farmers who own property on both sides of the border. We are stuck in a situation right now where students can't get their education, where teachers can't teach, nurses can't nurse, and farmers, after 3 years of drought, are finally seeing the opportunity to have a good harvest, and they can't get their crops off because the contractor can't come across the border. I congratulate and commend Queensland for introducing their agricultural code, because it means as the harvest starts in Queensland, those contractors can move down from Queensland into northern New South Wales and through our state. But harvest will stop at the border unless we get national consistency, and that has great risks for our food security and our supply chains. We produce enough food in this nation, clean, green, fresh produce, and that is all being put at risk by arbitrary border closures, restricting people moving from a COVID-free zone to a COVID-free zone. The ridiculous nature of what we're seeing at the moment is that the states are really thinking only for themselves.